Hello and welcome. I recently converted an old gaming laptop into a home lab server and wanted to give the Proxmox VE7 Type 1 hypervisor a test drive. Today is the day, so let's do it now. An older gaming laptop can make a decent personal home VM host since it still has a pretty strong CPU and good cooling for a mobile device. For this test drive, I've chosen to set up a freeIPA domain and a client-server virtual machine pair based on Fedora 34. So here we have the Proxmox web interface for Virtual Environment 7. And we have 32 gigs of RAM installed on this old laptop. It's running a Core i7 7700 HQ at 2.8 to 3.8 gigahertz, running Linux kernel 5.11. And we don't have the VE repository enabled since we're using the free version, so I don't have a subscription. And we also have a gigabit NIC connection. For the disk storage, I put in a nice NVMe M.2 1 terabyte Samsung SSD 970 EVO Plus stick. It's really super fast. It uses VNAND. Plenty for our project today. Let's switch over to the data center and let's create our first virtual machine. Let's give it the name IPA Serve 01. And the resource pool is freeIPA that I created earlier. I'll use the Fedora server ISO image to install. Click Next. We'll leave everything default here. We'd like to run the QEMU agent, guest agent. So I've selected that. For hard disk, let's give it 64 gigs. And the cache, let's make it write back. That's what's recommended in the documentation. So let's click Next. Let's give it 2 cores. And click Next. Let's give it 4 gigabytes or 4096 megabytes of RAM. And let's turn off firewall since we're in a firewalled environment and we're relying on the built-in operating system firewall. So let's confirm that our configuration is correct for our Fedora 34 server VM. Looks good, so let's click Finish. And there it is. It's configured. Let's click on it. Let's click on the console. Uses no VNC for communication. Let's click Start. And there it is. There's the ISO booting. Let's select Install Fedora 34 server version. And it's coming up. It's starting the installer, Anaconda. All right, we've got English as a language. Let's continue. Keyboard is English, US. Let's stay with the default partitioning scheme for our destination. Let's go to software selection here and click guest agent since this is going to be a guest VM for Proxmox. Click Done. Let's put in our FQDN, fully qualified host name would be ipaserve01.ipa.dom. And click Apply. There we go. Let's make sure our time zone is set correctly. Yes, it is. And the network time is enabled since freeIPA is time sensitive. Accuracy is important with domain controllers. Let's create a user, make him administrator, enter my password, enter the password again. So user Steven is created. We'll leave the root account disabled. So installation is in progress. So it's downloading packages and doing its thing. It's installing the bootloader now. Configuring the installed system. Creating the user. Creating the, or generating the init RAM FS. And it is complete. So it's time to reboot the system. Or our server, our freeIPA server. So there it is. Server edition of Fedora 34. And our login. I'm logging as Steven. Give it my password. And I'm in. So first thing is to install all the patches. So sudo dnf update. Enter my password, and we're off to the races. Looks like this is good. We have a bunch of patches to download. So I'll select yes or Y and hit enter. And the download starts. Now we're implying the upgrading. Lots of packages. There's a lot of churn with Fedora. Always has been. Lots of new updates since Fedora 34 was originally released. Several months ago now. All the updates have been installed, so now it's time to sudo reboot and hit enter. So let it come back up again. There's a new kernel, 5.13. Upgrade over 5.11, which is still available should something go wrong. And we're already at the login screen, so Steven and my password. And we've got the prompt. Let's take a look and see how much RAM we're using as a reference. So it's using close to 200 megabytes of memory. It's good to keep in mind. Let's do an IP check. So IP space A gives us 10.110.90. So let's sudo nano etc hosts. Enter my password. And let's enter the line 10.110.90. The FQDN comes first here according to the documentation. So we'll just double check. Yes, that's the IP address based on our guest agent, which is running. So it would be ipaserv01.ipa.dom. And the host name is ipaserv01. In that order, according to the documentation, as I just said. So let's write this out. Let's clear the screen. And next, let's sudo firewall-cmd --add-service equal curly brace freeipa-ldap, comma, freeipa-ldap-s, comma, DNS, comma, NTP, comma, Kerberos, close curly brace, -- permanent. So that will open up the ports we need for freeIPA. Success. So let's reload the firewall configuration with sudo firewall-cmd --reload. And success. So that's done. We've got the firewall configured. So let's sudo dnf install freeipa-server and hit enter. Lots of packages. We'll hit yes to download them. And we're installing. And the freeipa server packages have been installed. Let's clear the screen, and now let's sudo ipa-server-install and hit enter. Run the installation script. We'll not use DNS. Server host name looks good. The domain name looks good as well. Just hit enter here. ROM name looks good. Hit enter again. Let's give the directory manager a password. Let's enter it again to confirm. Also the domain admin password. Let's enter it once and enter it twice. And no, we don't want to configure cronny. So let's look at the settings. Look good. So let's type yes to proceed. Now the script is configuring our new freeIPA server instance. There's a lot of steps to do. This usually takes several minutes. The install script has just finished, and it's telling us to make sure those ports are open, which we already done. And we'll need to do a new Kerberos ticket for the admin user using kinit admin. So let's do that now. Let's clear the screen and kinit admin. So give it the password we gave earlier. So admin has the Kerberos ticket. So now we can IPA space user-add, and let's add a domain user. First name Steven, last name test1. Not my real last name, by the way. User login will be stest1. That looks good. We've got our user ID and group ID issued. Doesn't have a password, so let's do IPA password stest1. New password. And enter it again to verify. That's the temporary password. To make it permanent, we've got to issue a Kerberos ticket for it. So we'll do kinit space stest1. So let's give it our temporary password and give it a new password. And type it again and hit enter. Good. Now we have a permanent password for our domain user stest1. Let's do a free-h again. So we're close to a gig used. So right around maybe 800, math is right, 800 megabytes for the free IPA server to run in RAM. So let's reboot the server for good measure. Okay, we're booting kernel 5.13. Good, it's running. Okay, let's create the client. Let's click Create VM. Let's give the client virtual machine the name IPA CLT01, CLT for client. Resource pool would be the free IPA resource pool I set up earlier. Let's click Next. Let's use the ISO image for installation, the Workstation Live 34 image. Let's click Next. We want the QEMU agent running here as well. Let's give it 64 gigs, as with the server. Write back for the cache, as recommended. Let's click Next. Let's give it 2 cores again. Click Next. And as with the server, give it 4 gigs of RAM for the VM. No firewall. We're relying on our external and internal firewalls here. Click Next. Let's confirm that the client configuration looks good. Let's click Finish. And let it set up. So we've got IPA CLT01 available. Let's start the VM for the client. Let's start Fedora Workstation Live 34. and hit enter. So it's booting from the ISO. Get some console messages here as it comes up. Starting the GNOME Display Manager. There it is. We have a session. Let's go straight to install to hard drive. This is not going to be a review of Fedora 34. English is correct. Let's check to make sure we've got automatic hard drive configuration and partitioning set up. So automatic partitioning is selected. Let's make sure we've got network time turned on and with our time zone is correct. It is. So let's start the installation. And Fedora 34 workstation installation is done. Click Finish Installation. And let's reboot. And let's click Start Setup on the welcome screen. I'll turn off automatic problem reporting. So we're testing here. Let's click Next. We'll skip the online accounts today. Let's create a local user. Steven. And let's give myself a password. Type it once and type it twice. Hit Next. And we're all done. And we'll start using Fedora. No thanks to GNOME 40 Tour today. Let's launch the terminal because as with the server, let's make sure we're up to date. Sudo dnf update. Give my password. And let it check and sync up with the repositories for Fedora 34. Getting those updates. Okay, a bunch of packages to upgrade and install. So let's do that by hitting yes and hitting return. And it's applying the upgrades. 1,500 plus packages need upgrading. As I mentioned a little earlier, Fedora is under a lot of churn. And it's finally done. So now we need to reboot this virtual machine. Make sure all the updates took. So we'll do a sudo reboot. Give my sudo password and let it come back up again. There we go. Let's log in, give it my password for the local user Steven. Okay, now we're up to date. Now we can do further configuration. Let's open a terminal and let's check. Yes, we're running the latest kernel. And we're using close to a gig of RAM for GNOME 40. This is a full workstation, so a lot of things are happening in the background. Let's sudo hostname ctl set -hostname, and let's give it the fqdn of ipaclt001.ipa.dom and hit enter. Give it the password for sudo. Cool. So now our hostname is configured. Let's relaunch the terminal. There it is. ipaclt01. Let's check our IP address. It's 10.1.10.91 for the client and 10.1.10.90 for the server. Let's go back to the client console and let's sudo etc hosts. I mean sudo nano etc hosts. Let's add the line for the server 10.1.10 .90 in my case, IPA serve 01.ipa.dom, IPA serve 01. And then for the client is 10.1.10.91. And we have IPA CLT 01.ipa.dom. And then just the host name, IPA CLT 01. It looks good, checking for typos. All right, let's write this file out. So our host file has been taken care of. Next, let's sudo dnf-y install freeipa-client and hit enter. Has a whole bunch of packages to download for the client for freeipa. So let's let it do that. Let it install. And it's complete. So next, let's sudo ipa-client-install to run the client install script for IPA. We'll give it the server. --server is ipaserve 01.ipa.dom, and the domain is --domain ipa.dom. All right, proceed with the fixed values. Yes, we gave it the fixed values. We don't have auto discovery. We don't need that today. No cronny configuration. Let's review. Looks like the settings are correct. So let's type yes to continue. Okay, it's attempting to sync time. Time synchronization is very important for freeipa, just like with Active Directory from Microsoft. So we'll enroll this computer, this client, with admin, give it the password, and let it do its thing. Cool. So we've enrolled this client workstation. So let's close this terminal. Let's launch Firefox. And let's type in the address for our freeipa server, which is https://ipaserve01.ipa.dom. And hit enter. And let's log in with our username is admin. Our password we gave when we set up the server. There we go. We have two active users. We have the admin, the main admin user, and we've got the domain user as test1. Very good. Let's go to groups, user groups rather, and let's take care of sudo for stest1. With Fedora, the group that allows sudo is wheel. So we'll add the wheel group name. That's wheel group for Fedora sudoers as a description. GID is 10 in our case for Fedora 34. So there we go. So now that user group is available because what I want to do is I want to click on stest1 user. And first I want to fix the login shell. So /usr/bin/bash. Home directory looks good. And the rest look okay. You can add a lot of that stuff later, which we're not doing today to keep this video short. So let's save. And yeah, we're a member of one group, IPA users, so we'd like to add wheel that we just created. So we'll add it to the right column and click add. And there we go. stest1 is now is a member of group wheel. So it should be able to do sudo on our client. So let's go back to the terminal here and let's create the home directory for stest1. So sudo make dir /home/stest1 and hit enter. Give it sudo password for Stephen. And then we'll sudo chmod 700 /home/stest1. And next, we'll copy the skull files with sudo cp-r /etc/skell and then curly brace .b*, .mozilla. That takes care of all the skull files. And let's put them in /home/stest1 and hit enter. Okay, now stest1 has the skull files. Let's sudo chown -R stest1.stest1 /home/stest1 and hit enter. And there it's done. All right, so the home directory is set up. So let's reboot the client VM. So client is back up. So this is not a local account. This is not listed. This is a domain account. Username is stest1. Hit enter. Let's give it stest1's password and hit enter. And we're in. We got the welcome screen again. You got no thanks on that. So let's open the terminal and see who we are by typing ID. Yep, our user ID and group ID check out. We also have wheel as the group membership. That's good. So all that's working. Let's use Firefox to get back in to the IPA server. IPA serve 01.ipa.dom and hit enter. And so it already knows us. So it gives us our user page on the IPA domain server or domain controller. There is our user ID and group ID. So basically, we're just stuck on this page. So we can make our changes like job title and other things, addresses, things like that. We've got 2 active users. Okay, as expected. Let's log ourselves out because I like to relog in as admin for domain admin. And the admin's password we'll give here. Okay, so now we've got a whole bunch more options. Okay, so we've got 2 users like before. Our hosts, we've got the server and the client. Let's click on that. As you can see, the host has been provisioned and the Kerberos key is present. Cool. So a whole bunch of policies here and configuration items. That's way out of scope of this video. You've got host-based access control rules, mapping, authentication, certificates, tokens, radius services, auto-mount locations. We've got the role-based access controls here. Got a bunch of predefined roles, and you can add your own. Got realm domains, topology, configuration. Yeah. So we've got a working freeIPA instance on our home lab using Proxmox VE7. This video was just an appetizer for Proxmox VE7 and using Fedora 34 server and workstation to host a freeIPA Linux domain authentication instance. I'll leave further reading links in the description below. Thanks for watching. If it was useful to you, please consider liking and subscribing and hitting the notification bell to support this channel. Until next time, Have fun and take care.